recording. Are you recording this or?
Yeah, I'm recording it now.
Okay, great. Okay. So, Maurice, just to give you a high-level overview, this is, of course, your website. We're collecting first-party data and potentially from your mobile app as well, and that's being fueled by Tealium IQ, and that's enabling these different vendors here to collect client-side, so through the browser or the mobile app, all the interactions that are being generated in terms of, they've clicked on certain pages or they've gone to request a quote. All of that data is then being passed to any one of these vendors here as their tags, and that could include, analytics tags that you can see here, Crazy Air, Google Analytics, so on and so forth. Yeah, and could also potentially be being used by personalization engines like Optimizely to change content or A/B test content directly in the browser itself. So, as a quick high-level overview, we've got a tool here within the browser, and it allows you just to have a quick glimpse of what setup you have of Tealium IQ, the tag management solution, um, on your current website. So you can see the account and profile that's active in the current version and the last time it was deployed to production. And below, you can see a breakdown of some of the tags we're loading for you. So you can see we're loading tags for response tab. So that allows us to push data to response tab, which response tab connect to your customer services center. And so that customer services say, hey, we know you've looked at health information and elderly care, and it helps us bridge the gap instead of them, explaining the whole life story at the beginning of the call. Site catalyst, analytics, display, so forth. So you can see we're managing quite a lot of tags here for you already, but there's a lot more we can actually do here as well. Um, in addition to that, we've got enrichments we can make to the data. So this is probably quite interesting for you. So within the actual data layer, as in all of these data points that we're getting visibility of in the browser and in the mobile app itself, we can actually um, manipulate the data we're collecting. So for some examples are we can set cookie values, persistent cookie values. We're setting certain IDs. We are doing some session cam work here for them. We're locating data values in the data layer. We're setting page values. Um, there is quite a bit of stuff to do with event level data. So let's say if someone clicks on that get a quote button, you might not necessarily be collecting that information by default. We can actually we've got a really cool tool to show you, which allows us to hover over it and graphically say, okay, if someone clicks on this button or this image, set a value in the data layer, and then you can pass that value, that true or false value, uh, to your analytics tag or to a display tag, so you can repurpose that later on. So there's lots of different ways that we can manipulate and enhance what you're collecting in the data layer without you having to do a lot of that hard work outside in those individual vendors. So all about giving you a clean, rich stream of data, and that's going to be further complemented by this new offering we're talking about as well later on. So does that make sense so far as at a high level?
Yeah, so far, yeah. One question, sorry, let me know if I'm derailing the objectives
No,
of
no,
the
no.
session too much by the questions. But you were saying that we have the ability to be able to kind of do some, I don't know, put in some transformation rules and some manipulation on this level so that we don't have to do it later on. Can we continue to kind of build out what that library looks like on a real time basis? Say if we want to introduce something today, like that's fairly quickly to turn around and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of ETL you can do, and that is something that I'll actually visually explain in this diagram. So this is probably one of my favorite slides. I'm not sure if Adam showed this, but basically these are your experiences that we're generating. So you've got your desktop, mobile, and so on and so forth. We can ingest those interactions, for example, with our JavaScript container tag, which you've seen working through that little tool there, and through the SDK on mobile, and just general pixel track if you want to ingest any other form of input. We also have connections into enterprise data warehouses. Maybe you have old legacy data which is running on Perl, Ruby, etc. We can actually allow you to take advantage of that data and repurpose that as well. So you can unlock those silos, pull in call center data, any CRM data, um, and we can ingest that via API or batch files as well. Even IoT, so if there's some sort of medical device you guys have as an offering, we can even ingest that sort of data as well. So this is all being pulled into the Tealium Universal Data Hub, and this is comprised of 3 modules. Now, the first module is what you're currently using, which is our data control aspect, which is a tag management solution. It's Tealium IQ, which I've just talked high level about. And what drives that data control is the data layer. So think of it like a unified Excel spreadsheet. Each row has page name, product ID, the customer's ID, etc., etc. And we're
Like,
using that to fuel
like a data
your
mart.
tags, analytics, etc., etc., etc. That's where we currently are. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, so is that like a data mart? So essentially that's all in like one sort of semantic layer, and you guys consolidate into that view, or how does that?
Yeah. So just to
Who manages that
clarify,
data layer?
yeah. So just to clarify, in terms of the data layer, this is managed within the Tagment solution, and you guys are currently managing that. Now, the key thing to
Okay.
mention is in the data layer, it's not a storage piece. We don't store any data in it. All we do is we load the Google tag, and the Google tag passes that data directly to Google. Yeah, or we load the Facebook tag, and the data that's passed to Facebook goes directly and is stored in Facebook. At this stage, we currently do not store any data. Yeah, we just enable a piece to unify, clean that data, and then pass the relevant data pieces with the correct naming convention to that vendor. So if you want to send it to Site Catalyst, it's called it EVA and prop. If you want to send it to Web Trends, you call it WTXYZ. If you want to call it to Google Analytics, you call it, whatever variable you need to call it. Therefore, it's nice, clean, it's the truth, and it's structured. And we can actually do a bit of ETL through these extensions I talked about. And we can also enable an aspect of control uh, in addition to that through our privacy widget. So at this point, people can opt in and opt out and give consent basically to be tracked in analytics, any other tools that you're generating and using on your digital properties, and then you can use it as a control piece for the rest of the stack as well. And that's really important for GDPR, as Adam mentioned beforehand. Is that clear?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
No problem. So whilst I'm here, I'll just give you an overview of the rest of the stack and then we can jump into it. Um, so the next thing, which is quite important for you, is our data ownership piece, which we call data access. Now this is where we can actually filter and ETL a lot of this data for you directly from all of the events that are occurring in your experience layer. And then we can actually output this data in 3 different forms. So you've got your streams of data. So we can actually filter events. So one challenge you might have is there's a lot of noise in terms of all the events that are being generated by your web properties. You can actually say, okay, instead of sending me, hundreds, thousands, or millions of events based on everything that's happening on the websites and mobile, filter it down to specific journeys. Someone's come to the website, they've looked at dental care, then they've gone to request a quote, and then nothing's happened. Okay, that's a stream. We'll push that out directly through the data layer, through our data control. We might manipulate some of the data, clean it up a bit for you as well, maybe merge some data values, locate some data values, increment some metrics, do some cool stuff there for you, and then output this data directly to your analytics solution, to a data collection point, maybe an FTP on your end or Amazon S3 bucket we can host for you, or push out to a BI solution. Now that's really, really powerful because it means all of a sudden now from the points, the data sources from the sources of truth who've actually not done anything to that data apart from clean it up and in real time, literally, milliseconds, output that data to you to the location of your choice. And that's really important for when you want to get to the pulse of what's happening at your business and focus in on the key areas that you want to measure. Now, the ETL piece is also a massive time-saving part, which I'll talk about and show you in the solution. Um, this is also really powerful for mobile. So as Adam mentioned, typically we're seeing vendors have 20 plus different vendors, and that story often translates into 20 different SDKs in your mobile app, which means things can not be best in terms of performance. What we can do is, let's say 10 of those mobile apps were all about analytics and managing the data. We can remove those SDKs and just add the single Tealium SDK. And what will happen is all of those events and interactions will pick up, will clean up in the data layer, we'll push it via filtered streams, and then we can, via cloud delivery, push it to Site Catalyst, push it to Google Analytics, push it to Kissmetrics, and if any other vendors you choose have capability of ingesting it via API, we could push it to them as well. Yeah, so that's really, really, really powerful. And therefore, what we can do later on, which I'll show you, is we can actually enrich that data based on users, right? We can actually identify who these people are, and then you can pass that back into the mobile app and then personalize that experience with the other SDKs that you might have in there, like Optimizely or Maximizer or whatever you're using to add functionality. So does that make sense so far, just that particular story here?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and
Um,
I'm assuming. Yeah, sorry.
yeah. No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
I'm assuming that's streams, and then Redshift would be basically our feed of consolidating all of those events into our enterprise data solution.
Yeah, so if you say, okay, you know what, we want batch files instead, we can make cuts of the data that's coming through into structured, sorry, semi-structured like CSV files. Yeah, and that could be on Amazon S3, which you can then repurpose and push to your enterprise data warehouse or any other location you want. That's also useful for if you've got some old school solution which can't take API data, it can't take client-side data from the data layer, but it can take old school CSV files. Yeah, and you just want to upload it, on an hourly or weekly basis or whatever. So you have that option there. And then you have Amazon Redshift. So that's Amazon's answer to like a data warehouse in the cloud. And we can output this basically from Amazon. Basically, once you get Redshift, you get S3 anyway. So S3 will then structure that data a bit more, and then you can use Amazon Redshift to then host that data, and then you can overpin Tableau, Splunk, Looker, ClickView, any basically good SaaS-enabled BI solution to then fuel that data and get real-time view of all of those trends and activities that are generating. So just to give you a quick preview, it could look something like this. So this is just a Tableau Reader export that I've taken from one of our demo platforms, but you can see all of this data, if it was the actual online Tableau instance, will be filtered and would be, going up and down in real time, and you'll see all the products that people are clicking on, dental products, elderly care, travel insurance. So you'll then be able to see like audience dashboards and so on and so forth, and you can then tweak this accordingly, look for trends and look for ways that you can further enhance those capabilities. So there's a lot of options there for you at this stage, and keep in mind that is just still all of your visitor data, event level data. It's nothing to do with a unique user at the moment. But does that make sense so far?
Yeah, so like let me play this back to you just to make sure though. So essentially all the stuff that we're managing from a tag management system perspective and going through down to the data ownership layer and then the filtering, the ETL tooling, there is an opportunity for us to consolidate all of that and capture history as part of like a batch solution that we can manage through our ADW. Now, because of some of the transformation work that you guys would have done before that stage, uh, it essentially allows us to easily create different dimensions that we want to pass through into like some sort of reporting layer that we can plug into like Tableau or whatever it may be. So with the example so if you go back to your
Yep.
Tableau reports.
Yep. Right, there you go. Yep.
Let's say it's a bit of lag. Ooh, no. Oh, and now we're there. Yeah. So all these different dimensions. So visitor badge, um, what pages they've gone onto, all that sort of stuff. That's all kind of managed on your end and passed through into like some sort of organized
Correct.
data that we can then plug and play our way. And then,
Exactly.
what's the sort of process involved if we say we want to create a new attribute or a new variable or dimension? Do we then just engage with you guys and say, as one of the things that you're passing through, could we apply some transformation rules so that we get this as well, or what's that level? What's that engagement like?
Yeah, so you actually can do that yourself. So you can go back to the solution itself, and then you can update the transformation rules, which I'll show you later on in the demo.
Okay.
So that actually has a bit more user level data, which I was actually going to talk about. But you're absolutely right. We're here to fuel that, do some ETL and filtering, and then you can repurpose that and understand it in any of those reporting solutions. Um, Now, the third module and piece that we want to talk to you about is user actions. So basically, the enabler to, in real time, identify these people as an individual based on those interactions through IDs that they're exposing. So they could be coming to the Bupa website and they're anonymous, but when they log in, we've associated all of their current behavior in that session to the email address, yeah, or to their mobile ID, or to their Facebook ID. You can have as many IDs as you like. We just see it as another way to match deterministically based on first-party data they have exposed, um, as opposed to third-party probabilistic ways of guesswork. Our matching is based on actual data that the user has actually provided us. And what we can then do is in real time start to create segments and personas around the individual based on all of the interactions that they performed. So maybe they've gone to travel insurance 3 times, and then they've gone to single trip insurance, and they've abandoned the quote there. We can give them badges, as you've mentioned, saying, hey, they like they're a prospect for traveling because they've gone there 3 times, so they've hit the threshold for that, and they're a quote abandoner for travel because they've gone through the funnel, but they haven't finished that journey. So we'll give them a badge for that, and then that will enhance that user's profile that we can then use to then either take action on or fuel into your reporting suites. Yeah. So
Can I ask you a quick question on that? Because this is a very interesting topic.
yeah,
If I was to develop, say, propensity models or establish a little machine learning to kind of say, okay, when customers are doing this, they have a high propensity to need this or want to view this particular information. Are we able to plug those into this part of the decision system, or do we have to kind of handle that offsite and then load that into Optimizely or whatever it might be?
that's a good question. So if you have another solution that has predictive scoring and propensity, and okay, I've done some churning on this data, and I know that we've got Adam, he's got a propensity score of 9 towards getting dental care, and he might need elderly care. No offense, Adam, right? We'll append those scores against him, and what we can do, that could be another experience like your offline enterprise data. We could ingest that via CSV or an API, a call into our solution. And if we do see Adam's ID, that's already been seeded against him in the backend. And if he does come online and we see that ID exposed when he logs in, we'll stitch that data together. And now we know, okay, Adam's gone through these journeys, and this is a propensity score. And so you might have rules around that to say, okay, if he goes to the dental section and he does some actions, because his propensity score is 9, we'll treat him as a VIP and maybe give him some sort of incentive. And that's been enriched by the logic you've appended offline.
Yeah, I would have maybe done it the other way. I wouldn't have offered an incentive if they already got a high propensity to take it
I don't
off
know, you know
anyway.
me, I'm just,
Yeah,
I'm,
no, but
you can forgive me, I've got a cold.
no, that's okay. But I guess like, what happens if, and this is probably going a little bit beyond, so
Yep.
I'll make this a quick question. But if we present them with a proposition off the back of that decision, but we find that based on other behaviors, it's not likely that they are interested in that, i.e., they're on the page and they click off it quite quickly.
Yeah.
Is it able to then feed back to our modeling scores and for us to be able to do like a real time decision, or is that once again based on the capabilities that we have from our enterprise and what we can potentially feed that back, or is that real time, or do you know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to see how can we be like, how do we take it to that next step further and say, okay, if we think it's this but it's not, how do we quickly make another decision?
I mean, at the end of the day, we can push data up very, very fast. If there are people abandoning a funnel or they're bouncing off certain pages, we can flag that up and output that to you directly. And more the question is, if you're able to churn it and if you're able to apply logic against that quick enough and output it back to us quick enough, then we can utilize it and take advantage of it. So a classic example, standard, like a very simple example could be, you see this two-way arrow here. This is between the data layer on the page, the website or the app, and all of the user interactions and enrichments we're creating. So someone might come to the Bupa website, we pick them up, they log in, we get their email ID, that comes into here, we stitch it, and we start creating badges, etc. As you said, what we talked about, they went to the dental section, and they start exploring that. We'll then start badging them up and flagging them accordingly, and we'll pass those badges and enrichments directly back into the page. Yeah, so they are now exposed. That's now exposed in the data layer, and then those badges can be used for personalization, either to suppress or to use for remarketing, depending on which level logic you want to use. And it could include like any scoring that we've appended as well, like saying, okay, they've clicked on it 3 times. We'll output that score of 3 clicks in this session into the data layer as well. And if your technology that you're using also has visibility of the data layer, that can suck it up off the page, ingest it, churn it, and output it back into the data layer. We can then pull it back into audience stream, this solution here, and then go back and forth. So it doesn't really matter to us. It could be through the data layer, it could be via API. It's the question of how fast that solution is. I don't really see an issue with that. Maybe we can talk more about that later on down the road. But I completely get what you're saying there.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate it.
No problem. So just to finish this piece off, all of those now, that user data is now available as filter streams as well, as batch files to Amazon S3, and then also to Tableau, Splunk, etc. Yeah, and then of course you can output all of your learnings from Tableau, and EDW, etc., back into the user piece, so we can enrich those understandings in new segments. So that could include propensity scores and so on and so forth we just talked about. And then of course we can actually take action and enable interaction or suppression with those users through our server-side connectors. So that includes your email marketing solution. We could push this out to display advertising companies. A great example could be, and a real great use case is media suppression. So you might be pushing out display campaigns in Google AdWords search, etc., for people you might think you need to acquire, but really they might already have a policy with you, yeah, and you weren't making that link. So let's suppress those guys because they've already got a dental policy or a travel insurance policy, or they've all, or they're based on your research, then they're no way going to ever go for that. So we'll add it to as a suppression pot and make that aware of the display companies, for example. Same thing goes for social targeting. We've got Facebook, Twitter, and so forth. We can update your CRM solution, so we can enhance what response tab are doing. So instead of saying, oh, they've clicked on this, they've clicked on, these individual event level pieces on the website, we could say, you know what, they've come to the big website, they've gone to look at Elder Declare, they've actually gone through the journey, they've looked at more, they've downloaded some articles, and when they logged in, we now know that they are actually a high value customer. They spend, £20,000 with Bupa over the last X number of years, and all this other supplementary information we can pull in, and then we can feed that back into your CRM and enrich that view. And so when they do engage via the call center, or it gives them some flag that the call center calls them up, um, that conversation and that flow can be much smoother. And if any changes are made in your CRM, so for example, we've got a great video on the website about Salesforce. If any changes are made on there, we can output via API those changes back into this solution here. So it's all synced in real time. It's a two-way flow. And email is a good example of that as well. So if you send a fault abandonment email and they open it, we can input that via an API into our solution saying, hey, they've engaged with that content. And if they haven't opened it, maybe you might output a daily file from your ESP saying, these are the non-responders, and then use that to enhance additional further logic that you have for connecting to them. Yeah. So basically, the last piece is all of these connections and these interactions then allow you to then engage across all these third-party properties, with that relevant messaging, which can all then be tied back, and that sort of that loop then continues and flows from there. So for both of you, Alex and Maurice, does that give you a high-level understanding about what we can do and how we can really take you guys to the next level?
Yeah, it does. It does look really good. I just need to kind of really understand. Like, I'll read back into this. I'll rewatch this again just to kind of make sure I've got everything clearly. But what I need to understand more is what do we have now? How does it work and all that sort of stuff? Because, for example, this is the first sort of interaction I've had with you guys.
Sure.
I thought we had all. I'm not sure what we have already. Adam already referenced the fact that there are components of these three tiers that we have and we don't have. But I'll need to go into that a little bit further to see what we do.
Sure. Just to give you a very quick summary of what you currently have. So just you have this data control piece, this tag match solution, right? And we're now talking about these two other pieces, and mainly this, to identify users, stitch them, and take action upon them, right? So I'm just going to change my screen now to the actual technology. So just to give you a quick 5-minute overview, this is just a demo platform I've got for you guys. But this is what the tag management solution looks like. So you might have a number of different vendor tags that are being loaded on your web page. Crazy Egg for analytics and Google Analytics, for example. Yeah, and you might have double click and so on and so forth. Now it's in here we're loading those tags. So you've got your variables, which is your data layer. So page name, products they clicked on, so on and so forth. Your tags are all down here. Load rules, which is logic that determines when that tag should fire. So this person is on this page, or there's other conditions that you can apply for time range and so on and so forth. And then extensions, so ways that we can manipulate that data, as I talked about, lowercasing the data, merging data values, hashing data values, maybe you want to hide that and not share it, split segmentation, so appending A/B segments to individuals, so you can test one analytics vendor against another and then consolidate your technology stack, for example. Lots of different options. So your data layer could look something like this, whereby you've got, article IDs, customer IDs, so on and so forth that you're collecting off of the page based on those interactions that are being generated. Yeah. And we've got a number of different ways that you can build this out, but it's all mainly UI driven. So you've got nice, neat ways that you can add bundles to build out your data layer. Maybe, for example, you want to add customer data variables, which are W3C compliant. You literally click this import this bundle button in the top right-hand corner, and it adds these data sources into your data layer, and it will just sync up with the values that have the same naming convention on your web page. Yeah. If you've got video tracking, maybe it's talking a bit more visually about certain products, you just select video variables and click import. And if the conventions are the same and standardized, it will sync accordingly as well. And we can give you guidance on this to enhance your data layer that you currently already have. But the other great thing is we've got connections into e-commerce platforms and CMS systems as well. So for example, Sitecore, which you guys are just talking about. So literally by clicking import this bundle, I've now enabled Tealium to connect and pass the relevant basic variables that Sitecore would expect to see, which it can use for personalization, and then pass back into the page, which we can then reuse. So all you then do is log into Sitecore and then enable Tealium accordingly as well. So that's all done there. So that's basically like your foundation, getting your data right and getting it in order. Yeah. And this is stuff that we're already currently doing with you, and we can further enhance and review with you as well as we go through this process. The next thing I just want to talk to you about is how to add a tag. So we've got more than 1,000 different integrations. Yeah, it's a very, very big number, and it's a very powerful number because it means it's almost like we're like a supermarket. You can pick whoever you want to work with. And if we don't have an integration you guys want to work with, we will build it, and we'll build it for free. Yeah, that's really important as well. So if there's a new analytics vendor you want to use and you're really keen on using it, we can save a lot of JavaScript IT overheads by building it for yourself, putting it in the CUI, and you can easily integrate it and work with it. So let's say if I go with Google Analytics, I find Google in my marketplace, and I'll go down to the bottom. I'm just doing a fuzzy search so you can see lots of different vendors appearing. And I'll come down a bit, and you'll see we've got Google Universal Analytics. Yes, quite heavily used, 4.5 out of 5. I'll click Add this tag, and you'll see we've got a 3-step process for adding this tag. It's very, very easy. So you add in your configuration details, and you can even extract it from a piece of code, and it will just pre-populate. You then add your load rules. So by default, this tag will load on all pages and pass data to Google Analytics on all pages, and that's generally what you want. But if you do want to have specific rules assigned, you can very easily type in, any rule you want, like home page, load it on in the home page, and then this drop-down menu here pivots against your data layer. So I can then say, okay, find in my data layer the page name, and against some logic, maybe if the page name contains a home page, then that's when it should load. Yeah, and you can add and or logic. And I can also apply date ranges. So let's say if it's a new analytics vendor I'm testing out, I can say only fire between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning. Just give it a little trickle of data and just see how it works. Apply, done.
Can I just ask, with uh, with something like Google Analytics, I assume that you'd always want it to fire across every page. But then something like a tag that fires a survey or does some kind of deeper analysis on a page, like a heat map, we might want that to just fire on one page. So is that when we'd use that kind of rule?
Yeah, exactly. So if you have certain conditions when you want a tag to fire, you can use this rule to be very specific. That means that there's less code, JavaScript code being enabled and running, which means the speed of the page will be slightly improved, but also the data you're sending to the vendor, you're not just sending them data for data's sake and spamming them and having lots of noise on that vendor, you're sending relevant data.
Okay, and also for say GA or Adobe, I mean, we primarily use Adobe. One of the pieces of feedback that we've had from them is that we're not tracking as many data points as we could be. Say, for example, on the home page, we've got multiple links within different modules that we're actually not tracking because we didn't want to go over our data allowance.
Right.
But they've actually shown us a way that we can track that data without it being classed as a new event. It's kind of a data point within an event, I think. So is all that kind of work, is that also done through those rules, or is
it's done through a different point? Yeah. So let's say,
right.
did you say it was a survey, or what were those data points?
Well, we've got things like surveys that we run across the site, and those need to load on certain pages. But with Adobe, we've got that implemented across the whole site, but there are some tweaks that we need to make in order to be picking up more deep, more granular data for on-page interactions. So I was just wondering how we do those changes.
I'll answer that for you in a second. That's no problem. That's very easy to do as well. So let's say you've got your load rule set up now for that tag to fire. Now at this stage in your data layer, map and pass the data points you want to send to Google Analytics. So you can say, okay, here's page name, and I'm now going to pass that to in my mapping tool to page name here within Google Universal Analytics, and that's now done. Yeah. Now, let's say there are additional values I want to pass through, as you just said, and we can assume this is the site, this Adobe Analytics tag here. What I can do is if I go to your website, do you remember this tool I showed you in the browser? This Web Companion tool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so let's say there's a particular survey or something that pops up on the page. We've got an on-page element selector, and this has probably been used already to track some of the events on the page. Literally by selecting that, I can come and select anything visually on the page and select that and say, now if anyone clicked on this or engaged with this, I can pass that as a value in my data layer and then map that to a tag. So I can then say, okay, clicked on survey or whatever it is, yeah? And then I can say someone's clicked a link or viewed it, and it will trigger based on this condition. And so I will select they've clicked a link, for example. I'll add it to my queue, and then I'll save that to my profile, and it'll be saved directly within my account. And so if I come to the tag management solution now, tell me when you've gotten here. Is it showing?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. If I go to my extensions, it'll create a new extension here. So if I go to add extension, there's a tab called events, and it would have created a jQuery on handler event. And it would pre-populate all of this for you. And so it will have some code in here that will say, okay, this is the area on the page it's selected. It would be clicked link based on what you selected. And then all you have to do is say, what do you want to map and to which data source in your data layer? So I'm going to say, okay, survey clicked, and that's underscore. The survey clicked as a JavaScript value, and the value that's going to be is a text value, which is going to be true. Yeah, I can even add conditions to say certain time frames or whatever. I can add load rules against that condition as well. And so now, if I come back to my tag, which I was working on, so I'll just wait for that to load. I can now come here and then say, okay, auto pass the survey clicked value, which is true, as an event action. I don't know, I'm just mapping it to something. But that's how it would work. It's pretty straightforward stuff. And it's stuff that our existing team can already help you work on. So that's no problem. We can definitely, I think, when it comes to progressing this, certainly we can put down as one of the first pieces is to do a data layer audit for you guys and to review what you're collecting, what more can we collect, and how can we make it more efficient for your analytics perspective, especially with Maurice coming on board now. I think it's important for him to have a view in terms of what data is going to be meaningful for him as well. But I'm more than happy and I'm confident we can definitely help you there. Does that help?
Yeah, that does. That helps a lot. Thanks.
Great.
So from
Probably.
what you, I was just going to say, from what you were showing us on the homepage there, where you were kind of clicking the custom events, and they were then being added to the data layer. I mean, that looked very straightforward. Is that something kind of shape building and shaping the data layer in that way? Is that something that usually kind of the marketers or web analysts do rather than more technically minded people?
It depends on your organization. We've built it to be as least techy as possible. We don't want you to do coding. You know, I've seen people, using other tag management solutions, and I've actually looked at them, and there's a lot more JavaScript coding involved, whereas in this solution it's very UI based. So we find that we've got we have marketers using it, we've got analytics people using it, we've even got IT using it. It depends on your organization and where it sits the day-to-day responsibility. But the other tool itself, which I'll show you in a second, where we can identify users and create rich segments, that is also something that typically sits maybe potentially with marketing or with maybe your agency, for example, or we can even help you. So it's something that we can decide and talk about. But the main thing is there's no real major requirement for coding, which will save the organization so much time and give you so much flexibility so you can concentrate on the things that really matter.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And also, and the way that I imagined the data layer being designed, which a few people said is best practice as well, is that the data layer is very consistent across the website, across all
Yes.
pages.
Yeah.
But how does that work with what you just showed us, where most of our pages, there are some consistent templates, but a lot of unique pages. So how does that work if you can go onto an individual page and select elements that are unique to that page that then go into the data layer? How do you kind of do that and
Yeah.
still have a
So
consistent layer across the site?
so let's say you've got we're on this, we're on the dental page now, and I want to pass some values into my data layer from here, which only exist on this page. Yeah, it doesn't exist anywhere else because it's dental specific. Um, One thing you can do, if it exists already in the page, is you can come to your web companion and you can come to your tools, sorry, you can come to your data section, and it will show you any HTML elements or cookie elements or JavaScript variables that is detecting within the page itself. And then I can say, okay, find some JavaScript variables, I don't know, it might be, let's see, pardon me, see if I can find something that makes sense, a bit of sense. Um, variable. So maybe it's something like this value here we're trying to collect. I've now added that value as a JavaScript variable into my changes below here, and then I can save this into my profile. And what will happen, or might select a few more, it's now added those three into my queue. And so now if I come to my data layer, it would have then added these as JavaScript variables into my data layer. There's none at the moment, but it would have synced it and added it, and it would have said added via the Tealium Web Companion. Yeah, because those values have got the same naming convention, it would sync it up automatically off the web page. That's a very easy way that you can take data points from your website that exist only on specific pages, so that you can still share that with other tags and allow it to enhance experiences on other pages that might not have that data value as well. And it all, I think, comes down to really, if you've got page name on all different web pages, right, that page name is going to be consistent because it's being mapped, with a consistent value. But if you're finding that maybe different values are being mapped to it, or maybe what's the correct word? Conflicting values are being added into that. That's something that we can look into and maybe do an audit and see how we can clean that up. But that really shouldn't be that difficult to do. It should be rocket science. It's pretty standard stuff. So does that help? How's that question?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. Um, so moving on, because I'm conscious of time, the next thing I just want to touch on and talk about is the Universal Data Hub, how we can take this data and start adding real value to it. So we've got a collect tag, which allows us now, because at this stage in Tealium IQ, we're not storing any data. We're literally loading the vendor's tag and passing that data to those different technology vendors. Now, the Tealium collect tag is, in essence, pushing all of this data to our Universal Data Hub so we can store it and start quick enrichments and stitching it. So we give you one piece of code, and you save it, and that's it, done. You now have access to this solution here. So this is where we can start to create rich cross-device, domain, and session-stitched views of users uh, engaging with the Bupa brand, whether it be on your website, through CRM, through all of your different websites. Yeah, we can give you that view. It can be a single view, or it can be done for regions. It's up to you how you want to roll that data up into the platform. So we can now see individuals coming through, and if they're travel fans, if they're looking at single trip insurance, if they were looking at a quote and they started a quote funnel and then abandoned it, if they've not got any cover, maybe their insurance has expired and they're not aware of it and they're just browsing the website, we can maybe have some sort of pop-up on the web page saying, hey, you know, you're not covered, you're at risk. You know, here's an offer to join us. Maybe they have a joint family. You know, all of these bits of information we can pull in and supplement maybe third-party data or demographic data to really enhance the interactions that they're having with your brand. Maybe you might have flags saying, you know, they're in market. So maybe, you know, they've gone to the quote details section and you know that they're in market because they're looking to create a quote. High value customer, maybe as they've logged in and provided an ID, we've stitched their email ID with what we currently have existing against them. And previously we know from offline data we've ingested from the CRM that they've got a lifetime value of more than £1,000 or however much you want to define that threshold as. Yeah, so there's lots and lots of different views here that you can create, and it's completely up to you what dimensions you want to do, but it's all based foundationally on your data layer and the data points you capture. As long as you have that in order and you know that foundation is there, you can do so much cool stuff in real time. And the thing to also know is that all of these badges and activity are being assigned and removed in real time. Yeah, so literally within milliseconds, we're saying, hey, this person's abandoner. Oh, they didn't abandon. They've come back to the funnel and completed it. We'll remove the quote abandoner badge, so you don't have to unnecessarily send remarketing incentives to them afterwards when they leave the website. Yeah, is that making sense so far, guys? Before I continue.
Yeah, that's making sense.
Great. Now, what you can then do is you can combine these badges. So, someone who's a high-value customer, who's you know, might be female, looking at dental cover, and they haven't got any cover at the moment for dental, for example, and they're a smoker. You can push that into these audiences down here. And it's these audiences which are in essence like your segments that people are coming in and out based on those badges. So if one of the badges are removed, then they fall out of that audience because they don't have all the badges to be part of that. And if the badge then gets reassigned and they've got all the badges, they come back into that audience. And it's these audiences that allow us to then push to remarketing connectors for remarketing or suppression, for example. Yeah. Now, I'm just going to select and jump to the connector marketplace. So I'll give it a few seconds to load. So this is, hopefully you can see this now. These are all of our server-side integrations, including cloud delivery, as I talked about from your mobile SDK. So you can see we've got lots of analytics vendors that we can connect to. Yeah. So you've got your Google Analytics, Site Catalyst, and so on and so forth. And we're adding many, many more. And if there's a vendor that you don't see here, you can use our open API, our webhook, to connect that data to them, that event level data to them as well. Display advertising wise, we've got a number of big names here, you know, DoubleClick, AdForm, MediaMath, Criteo, Facebook, that you can output to. And this could be for, again, as I mentioned, suppression as well, very important. Email vendor-wise, you've got a large selection here of email vendors. Do you know which, can you remind me, which ESP do you guys use?
Which what, sorry?
Which email vendor do you guys use?
To be honest, emails are not a huge thing that we do at the moment.
Okay.
I'm not sure out of those because we use an outsourced agency called HTK, and they've got their own technology, but I'm not sure if it's something they white label. That's probably one of these.
All right, okay, cool. So we can always integrate one of those anyway if need be. So there's lots of different options, and Optimizely, we've got integrations with them as well, so we can push all of this rich data based on those journeys directly into the page, and Optimizer can use that to then assign segments accordingly and then enhance that person's journey accordingly. Of course, social, Facebook, Twitter, as I talked about, and then outputting this into CRM. If you've got which CRM do you guys use at the moment? Could you please remind me?
We use Dynamics.
Okay. So Dynamics is a connection we do have now, so we can output all of this data that's being generated into Microsoft Dynamics in real time, and then if updates are made in Microsoft Dynamics, we can ingest those interactions back into our platform to sort of close the loop. Now,
Quick
just
question.
to
Under big data, do we have things like Hadoop and?
actually, that's a good question. So you can use the webhook here to output to Hadoop. We've got clients that we've worked with that are using Hadoop, so that's no problem. So you can use the webhook, or we can output it via Amazon Redshift or Tableau, or as a filtered stream. It doesn't really matter to Hadoop from what I understand of those examples. So that's no problem at all.
Cool, thanks.
Great, no problem. And just to confirm, if I click on, I think it's events by event, you can see these are the, actually we go to the top. So these are the event-driven connectors. So when I talked about cloud delivery, pretty much all of the analytics vendors are enabled for passing data directly from the mobile SDK as a filtered stream out via the cloud to your analytics vendors. We can also push it into Criteo, one email vendor, and a number of these other vendors here. So that's really, really powerful for reducing any strain on your mobile app as well. So that was a quick high-level overview. I've got a bit more to show you, but is that making sense so far?
Yeah,
On my end, it's looking really good.
Right. So just to dig into the data a little bit more, like these dimensions, I think Maurice is probably wondering how are these dimensions being created. We've got a number of different what we call attributes, and you've got different scopes for how these are generated. So you've got event-level attributes, which are things like, the things in your data layer, like JavaScript variables, HTML variables, first-party cookie values, etc. But then you've got visit event for single visits, or visitor events that are going to grow over time as persistent values. And then you've got your omni-channel data attributes, which could be input via a CSV file from a CRM, or API ingestion data, which we're using to create dimensions as well. I'm just going to select a visitor attribute, and then in here, you can see you've got a number of different data types. So you've got number values, which you can then perform enrichments against. Yeah. So against the number value we're collecting, we can increment and decrement that number. We can set ratios, set product ratios, differences between numbers. You can see all the calculations that we've got here. It's quite a lot, and it's quite powerful. So you can use this to really do a lot of the heavy lifting for a lot of these number variables directly in the page in real time, without having to do it retrospective in your end within your reporting solution or any other vendor. We can collect and create like tallies, or almost like arrays. What is the most frequently clicked product type, and then we can create a tally against that. And whichever one has the highest score, that's the favorite product for that individual, for example. And maybe you can use that to personalize. But you can see ways that we can enrich and manipulate that data that we're collecting as well. Strings, so like string values, text values, we can collect as well. We can split the strings, give A, B, C, D segments. You can lowercase your string values, and even join your string values. So a really good example of that is actually using it to create a composite ID. So maybe you have a husband and wife that are on the same family policy, but you don't know exactly who's engaging. Is it the husband or is it the wife? Um, so maybe the policy ID is the same for both of them, but you might join policy ID with first name, or something that determines that individual, or account ID. And then that way you can create a unique individual. And then we can actually push this composite ID into a visitor ID. So we now know on an individual level, was it the husband or was it the wife? Yeah. Um, Booleans, so true, false values, collecting date values, and you can manipulate those date values accordingly. We can collect array of string values. Funnels, really important. So over time, you can track any kind of journey. So a really simple example is create a funnel for anonymous people that come to your website, and if they abandon the sign-up page, yeah, we could straight away personalize to them straight away, maybe via live chat or some sort of display advertising to them, or quote abandonment, or any journey you want. You can have a ton of funnels in there to really get on top of these individuals and engage with them. And then timelines, so as they're going through engaging with your brand, we can track and based on those events, interact with them. But a very important one are visitor IDs, which I want to talk about. And this is how we can stitch these individuals and create an actual holistic user profile. And so if I click to filter visitor IDs, you can see you can have a large number of different unique IDs that you can use to attribute against the individual and tie their behavior together. And almost think of it like a keyring of IDs. So as many keys you have on there, that will allow us to then have visibility and increase our reach for deterministically matching that individual. So when they come to the website, they sign an email ID, a mobile ID, etc., we will then stitch that accordingly based on their existing behavior and any past interactions they've done on their mobile app, or any call center interactions, and so on and so forth. So you can get a real view of the individual and then take action. And the great thing is that you could upload a batch file of 1 million records or so via omnichannel, and that could include lots of different data dimensions. So it might be via an S3 batch file or via API, and you could associate all the records against an email ID, and in there include insurance status, number of kids they had, the family type, the last time they visited maybe a clinic, if they're a high earner, any propensity score data. This can either be a batch file or API. We can adjust it, stitch it, enrich it, and give you that rich view of those individuals, which we can then take action on. Is that making sense so far, guys?
Yeah, on my end,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think so.
Great. So let's say you've now got that all set up. You might want to take action and market to these individuals, or you want to get an idea of the size of these audiences potentially that you have. You can actually look historically at events that have occurred in a previous time frame. So I can filter this to a different date, for example, and then from here I can merge 3 different rules. So I can say, okay, find people who I consider are high-value customers in that time frame that engage with my brand across all my channels. Find me somebody that has looked at more than 3 products in that time frame, yeah? And then find me someone that is a quote abandoner, yeah? So we know they're engaged in our brand, they're high-value prospect, and they've abandoned a quote. So we want to reach out to them and try and get them to come back to our website. So now what it's doing, it's finding people who've met those conditions, and it's overlaying them in a Venn diagram. And so you say, okay, you know what? I like these numbers. It's actually worth marketing to or using. I can now select these individuals accordingly. Yeah, I like those segments. Those are the pots I want to use. Set up a job and call it my, VIP cart abandoners. Yeah, or actually maybe call it quote abandoners. And then create this job, which I can use to either in real time activate on or push as a batch request through. So go to my marketplace, and then I might want to push it into Facebook for advertising. Yeah. So you add in your Facebook account credentials, and then I can create a custom audience directly within Facebook, for example, for my VIP card to banners, for example. And then I can choose to add them to a custom audience, remove them from a custom audience, or opt them out completely from custom audiences. So that could be useful for the GDPR point. So we can actually, have our track and opt-out status in the tag management solution, as we talked about, push it into the Universal Data Hub as a universal right to be forgotten value, and then push them into all of these other connectors server side to say, hey, remove them from these technologies to completely suppress them. Yeah. But in this case, I want to market to them. So in here, I'll call this my VIP code of banners, and then I select my audience. So I've got my audiences that are being generated in real time based on conditions that I've set. I've combined badges, etc., high value travel insurance prospects, and so forth. Or I can go down and select the batch audience I've just created here to output to them in one sweep. And then this will sync up based on my credentials and pull through the current custom audiences within Facebook. And then I can choose to connect with Facebook using its ID. So each connector is different for each vendor because they're all different, right? So we've had to cater to that and build these really advanced connections. So then, for example, you select email address, find email address from your drop-down, and then that's mapped. Now, if there are people that don't have an email address, but they've given a Facebook ID or a mobile number, hopefully we have a mobile number, yep, we can pass their telephone number through as an ID to stitch with social as well. And if they have given a Facebook ID, we can use Facebook ID as well. So now we've completely increased the reach threefold of how this connect will work. If we only have one of these values for that person, we'll still be able to communicate with them via Facebook. Click Save, and done. You've created your connector. Save and publish, and then this will fire automatically either when these events occur, if you made it to an audience, or fire as a batch request through to Facebook. Custom audiences, and then in that solution, you can then choose to market to them however you like. Sorry if I sped up a bit. I know we're running low on time, but I just want to give you a high-level overview there. And then just to cement this, if I come back to the tag management solution, you'll see that all of the audience values, the device they're using, their date of birth, the dental count, the products they're engaged with, the type of family that they have, all that kind of stuff, all these cool pieces of data, are now in your data layer. So now you can go to your tags. I can now come to my, my Google Analytics tag, and I can tell it, don't just load based on, this might be another tag, but, don't just load based on page name, but also load if they are if they've got an interest in making a claim. This might be a relevant badge, or load if they are a high-value customer, if that badge is assigned. So it's now being exposed in the page, so now your tags can take advantage of that. And I can also pass to my analytics tag these rich data points as well. So only now will you not see boring page name and this is what they clicked. You can now see rich data points, which would have taken you ages to understand as just a standard value. So I'm just going to select anything to map against, but now you can pass through that. They're a dental fan. Sorry, let me remove that. And you can say, okay, this is a high value customer as well. So I'll up in a high value. So you can see we're closing the loop here and allowing your tags client side as well to take advantage of that for personalization or for analytics or any other purpose you're using these tags for as well. And don't forget, this is all available in your reporting suites and Tableau, Splunk, whatever you want. So I hope that helps as a very high-level overview of what we do.
Thanks. I think it's really good, but it might be worth just kind of us giving it a go to see what, especially myself who's not had any experience with Tealium in the past, to kind of see what it can do and playing around with it. But it was a really good overview. Quick question: what's the maybe for Alex and Adam? What's the sort of communication like between you guys? Like, are we able to engage with these sorts of sessions? Like, if I'm in Tealium using it and I want to get some additional help to see what does this mean or whatever it is, at least for the discovery phase, what's that engagement level look like? Or how do you guys move forward with that?
Well, we can, engage in any way you want, really, in terms of understanding how the system works. And how do you mean? Do you want to do some sort of a workshop with it, or?
Yeah. So, is there anyone that we've been engaging with in the past that kind of takes a look at how we've been using Tealium and what's been working well, what isn't working well? When we go into it as well, and we have our own questions, is it a matter of me just getting in touch with Niraj and saying, okay, what does this mean? I'm trying to do this. Is that ongoing support network there, or?
Yeah, so you've got an assigned account manager called Charlie West,
Okay.
who is your day-to-day contact for that sort of stuff, which is really dealing with your sort of current situation and anything you want to know around that. And then and Niraj would obviously be on hand. So me and Niraj work closely together. We didn't really do any intros, but he's the solutions consultant, and I'm one of in the sales team. So I think when you want to look at things like going further into the Universal Data Hub and perhaps looking at things like audience stream and data ownership and so on, then it would be myself that you would come to. But then anything day-to-day training or sort of knowledge sharing and getting better understanding of the tools, then that would be Charlie West, your account manager. That's how that would work. But I mean, you could just use us as a point of contact, and I can filter out who needs to speak to you about whatever it is you're keen to look at, really. If that makes sense.
And on that point with audience stream and the data and the data access,
Yeah.
one of the things I wanted to kind of ask was, do you guys have any particular case studies of people who are using those products and how they're using it and best practice, and any references from other people that are using it that we can kind of tap into as well if we wanted to explore that further?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can organise that for you as well. I can give you some stuff in the first instance, and then we've got customers you can talk to as we progress as well, that are happy to share how they're using the system and their experiences of going into the wider Universal Data Hub as well.
Cool. Yeah, because that's something I'm always interested in, right? Because I think it's one thing to kind of read what's on the box, but it's another thing to kind of say, okay, how has it been used by somebody, and what sort of problems have they been able to solve from that?
Yeah.
How did they find implementation? How did they find it? Like from a training perspective, and how comfortable are their users, and what things do we need to kind of look out for if we were to make the plunge? So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I mean, we can definitely cover all that off as well. But I'd be keen. Go on.
So one of the things I was going to say, you touched on a key point, Maurice, about problems. It would be good if after this you ever think about what problems you're currently having with a fresh view to this whole area that we can try and help with. And even if you're not sure if we can help with it or not, just please let us know, because it'll help us to guide and make this more relevant for you as well.
Yeah, cool, brilliant.
Okay. Well, what I'll do, it'd be good to get a session in the new year to sort of refresh, because after Christmas and everything's gone, it'd be good to sort of have a refresh and think more about what your kind of pain points are. Think about getting some people to speak to you that have already had experience with us, and going from there. So I'd be keen. Alex, I don't know if you're able to set something up. We can put some time in, but towards the end of January.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think probably towards the end of January would be a good time. Sorry, we're going to have to jump off. We've got to get into another meeting quickly. But thanks for taking us through that. It was really useful. I think it's given me a lot of points that I want to take away and discuss with Maurice, and we'll come back to you.
Okay. Well, look, let's catch up.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I'll give you a shout in January, and we'll get something in the diary to continue our discussions, basically.
Great.
And would I be able to get, so that was all recorded, I'll be able to get a link to kind of
yeah, I've got the recording here.
Watch that again.
When I close this down, it should give me the option to share it.
Brilliant. All right, thanks, guys.
Nice one.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, cheers, guys. Have a great Christmas, and catch up with you in January.
Great.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks. Have a good Christmas.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Guys.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.